All right. Welcome, everyone. This is our November monthly district webinar. Um, I'll give some of my usual updates about Advisor and how the fall collection's been going. Maggie Sis from the assessment team will be talking about the NSCAS and statewide assessment rosters. And Brian Helzer, who's been as part of our team for about 2 months now, I think. We'll talk about data governance. And Maggie, I see you in the attendees. I'm trying to promote you to a panelist. I don't know if that asks you to accept or something. Anyway, I will get started. As usual, we will get the slides and everything that we talk about today, as well as a video of the recording. We'll get all of that posted to the NE Data Conference website, probably within a week, I would say. So check back here if you want a copy of these slides. All right. First thing I want to do, just kind of, as usual, give a little review of the collection we've done, take any ideas about things to improve, any discussions, anything that anyone wants to add. Please use the Q&A panel in Zoom if you want to ask us anything or mention anything. All right. So starting off with the follow-up collection, which is generally, that's where we finish the prior year's data. There were a lot of late requests with this one and late tickets, or tickets that we couldn't get to. I mean, as of the due date. So it took us almost 3 weeks. We had about, I think, 82 districts that we had to work with after the due date to help get things through. A lot of that may have been special education data, I would say. That's good though, because the special education data, like your final year-end counts and exiters, that goes to the Department of Ed, or that went to the Department of Ed already a week ago, November 2nd. So we just got a little bit of time to review that data after it was finalized. You know, if anything, I mean, that really kind of cut it close. I would certainly not like it to take that long, but I'm not sure that we could move it up. We pick October 2nd as the due date because technically that is the last effective date to see students and change them from being a dropout if you see them return by October 2nd. But I guess my first question is that October 2nd due date a problem? Do people still want it to be later? Do people, you know, I would like it to be earlier. I figure if we move it any earlier, we're only just going to interfere more and more with the beginning of the school year steps that every district is always working with. So you know, if you have any opinions about the due date, please pop it in the Q&A or the chat, I guess. And just to be clear, once we report your 21-22 SPED exits, they have been reported to the feds. We'll reject any late requests we see to change that data. If you still need to exit someone from 21-22, generally we're going to suggest that we do it through a record reported, you know, in the summer of 22-23, or, you know, the summer of whatever the current year is. This, depending on the situation, this may create an error that you aren't going to be able to resolve. Just another reason why we hope to avoid that. A couple things from the Q&A. Suzanne said, I'd like to be a few days later if possible, maybe 10-5. That definitely sounds like something I wouldn't have a big problem with. So I'll write that down. We'll keep that in mind. Don said the only issue was the weekend, hard to get admins to sign off on the weekends. Yeah, we don't do a floating date, or I didn't, just because, like I said, the 10-2 is like the date. It's exactly 10-2 in the rules, so we just kind of stuck with that. But maybe, yeah, going to a floating date that can happen a couple of days after 10-2 might be a better option. Oh, Sandy said chat is disabled. Sorry. Yeah, just keep using the Q&A window. Becky's asking about what current year data affects the prior year's data. Well, I have a slide about that, so we'll talk about that some. Next. Yeah, SRS definitely did have some more challenges this year than usual. Obviously, we hope that would be a little smoother next year. Thanks for sending the feedback, though, everyone. It's definitely what I'm looking for here. Like I said, most of the late dates was all about transfers, graduates, and sped exit codes. I mean, a lot of it could be corrected in May, June, or September. Obviously, there's some cases where you just don't know the data, you don't know that it's happening, but these are the questions that come to my mind. Do we need to provide you any other data or reports so that you see this coming sooner? Our districts, are you not aware of exits in back in June? With a few exceptions, generally you should know who all your graduates are by June, I think. Other than we know there's always some people that graduate through the summer. Is it just because of there's just too much stuff to do in June and the timing of your year-end process? I know for some CIS vendors, for some CISs, I should say, you have to run this year-end process at a specific time, and then that creates your graduates, and it may be hard to keep track of all of them that way because you're not going through and doing them individually. Yep. Yeah, I've got that in the next slide. Anna's talking about grouping errors. Definitely something I think we'll do next year. Yeah, and some graduates, obviously, yeah, you don't know till fall. I know, I mean, just from working with all these districts that had some late changes, so a lot of it is, just stuff that they weren't aware of and didn't catch it till late. Private school students that live within our boundary, that would help us exit students earlier. Missy, I'm not sure how that relates to exiting students. Are you talking about students, private school students that, I mean, if you're literally just private school students that live within your boundaries, we don't know that literally. We would only know data about private school students that have been reported by a public district. We don't have any data source to get truly the answer you're looking for, I think. I know we have talked about that before, but at a minimum, if we have data related to students that have been submitted to advisor, and we can look at their district residents. That's something we could create a report out of. Yep, Phil just mentioned, yeah, there's always grads they don't know about until after summer. True. Yeah, Kim said there's exits, and I'm assuming this is more like transfers, things like that, that you kind of don't know about until the next year starts. It would be awesome if the SISs would get the reporting turned on as quick as possible. Yeah, August 1st is the first date that we turn on the system for vendors to be able to connect. I don't know if vendors would necessarily be able to get everything up and running and done by August 1st, although I think that is the goal that we should aim for. But you know, I think I could say that we would like them to come on earlier than they have in prior years. So anything I could do to help the vendors get that going sooner, we will try to help them with that. Suzanne said also sped exits from students that left over the summer. So I assume that means like transferred out. So again, that's not something you find out about until the new year starts, I guess. Angela said, we have students who attend alternative school summer session, which does not end until August. Yeah, true. Okay. Yep, also another case of late graduates. Jean was asking about how to get the reports to print easier. The way the reports are now, you'll never be able to just hit Control P and print it from the browser. But yeah, you can, if you export it to Excel, it doesn't always look 100% good. Jean, I'd recommend you export them to PDF if you want to print them. Then that should basically look exactly like what you had on the screen. Yeah, and I was saying, as one of the vendors, summer's already full of other projects and not a great time to be working on advisor. Yeah, that's a good point. I think we've seen that with some vendors. There's also, you know, some vendors that are still working on changes up through the end of the prior year. So yeah, there may not be a good answer for that, but good point, Anna. All right. Thanks again for sending in all the feedback. So got a few suggestions already to add new reports that we would add for this upcoming May. One would be basically a list of 12th graders who are in special education. We'll show you who they are, their sped exit date and type, or exit reason, as well as their enrollment exit date and exit type. You know, just a lot of the problems do have to do with either graduates or people, especially with sped students who are coming back, you know, staying on until they're 21, things like that. So this report might just be a good way to focus in on them. Another one that was suggested was, you know, if you aren't aware right now in advisor validation, if you look at your enrollment section in the reports, there's one that lists every student that was reported as a completer, with or without a degree, every student listed as a dropout or withdrawn, I think, as well as every student that's listed with a 205, not enrolled, eligible to return. One suggestion was to basically create a report like that that covers all the other exit codes, which would primarily, I think, be useful for transfers. You can get a list of all the transfers. Jamie asked, is there any chance we can get a validation notifying us if a student enrolled at another district when we have ended the enrollment with a 202 or 205 dropout or not enrolled? That's an interesting idea. I didn't think of that, but it would be probably pretty useful to see on this list of transfers or the list of not enrolled students, do we see them in the following year? Obviously that means that, you look at these reports in May and June, but the thing about are they showing up in the next year, you're not going to see that until we get the next year's data. So maybe we make these reports listed and that would go in the prior year, but maybe also some kind of report similar to the errors that show you, hey, here's a dropout, but now they're returned. Or maybe we'll just make them we'll just use the validation error system to show you dropouts who are appearing in the new year, stuff like that. So I like that one, Jamie. I might put that on the list as well. Burke, is there a way to mark kids birth to 3 instead of PK? Not right now. Obviously your birth to 3 kids would be in your early childhood records, would they could be SPED only students, I suppose. If they're in an early childhood program, it would probably be one of the home-based ones. I'm not sure what you're getting at by being able to change their grade level, or I'm not sure how that helps you with the reporting, Bert, but feel free to follow up. Send us something else about that. Or, if you don't want to type it out right now, please, anyone, always feel free to email us at advisorhelp@nebraskacloud.org. If you have any longer comments you want to discuss with us about any ideas. So one thing we hinted at before, I've run this idea by some folks already. It seems more than I expected. Districts seem to kind of partially rely on the validation errors in the new school year that trigger and point back to data that looks like it's missing from the prior year. The big ones, there's 3 big ones. One that says a K-8 student from last year is not appearing this year. The other one is a 9-12 student in your cohort is not appearing this year and they were here last year. And then the other one is the 546 SPED error that says you had a SPED student last year that didn't exit and is not found this year. In theory, these errors all point to data that's already present in the prior year. You can find it in a report. But I guess that the error does really help kind of consolidate that and make it simpler. So I get that that's maybe why people like using it to help with the prior year's data. One key thing which we've already talked about from your feedback is that these errors in the new year that point to missing data, they can't ever be valid until your SIS and for most of you SRS are publishing data in the new year. So again, long term, that's always our goal, is to get that new year publishing turned on sooner. And the better we do with that, the more useful these errors become. Let's see, Suzanne said, specifically with non-public, special ed students. A report for sped students with less than 1 FTE. That would be great to identify the non-public students. I think the non-public students should also have a setting code, I believe, in their special ed records that would identify them. So I wouldn't think just the FTE would be needed to identify those, unless that's not what you mean, Suzanne, or you're talking about looking at the FTE code to help identify students who may have the incorrect sped setting code. Maybe that could be turned into a warning, like you have a 1 FTE sped student, but their setting code is such and such. Definitely follow up with us on that one, Suzanne. That could be turned into an error if we get some more details, or put some more stuff in the Q&A. And it said, by law, the public district has a responsibility to make sure any student of a certain age residing in the district is attending school. Does private school have a responsibility to share information with the public school district? I don't know if they have the responsibility, but I'm not aware of, a universal system for private schools to do that. Yeah, like you said, it seems to be handled several different ways in the metro, and I'd be curious if communication could be more standardized. Yes, obviously from a technical standpoint, we definitely could build something that would help with that. I don't know if we would, if we could really demand that of all the non-publics. That is certainly a valid question we should be asking, though, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's something that will change anytime soon. I think that would require a large change in the data we get from non-publics, but I think that is something we should consider. We have some data committees, higher up folks. I think that is definitely something that I could bring to them. A slide mentions the NDE checklist. When I said the checklist, that there's not like literally a checklist in like advisor validation. I was just kind of referring to our service desk as part of the presentations we do for each of the collections. We usually publish a Excel file that has a list of like all the reports to check for the fall collection and the year-end collection. So that's kind of what I mean when I say checklist. It's not necessarily an official thing that you have to go on and check off. It's like part of a sign off or anything, but sorry, I should go through the rest. As you can see, if you've read ahead, so I think we'll definitely make a change before next fall. I want to set off the validation error, or separate the validation errors that are things that look at the prior year. I think there's a few more other than the ones I just mentioned, things like related to 205 codes and things related to graduates. There's one related to English learners, I think. So we'll get the full list of stuff that's errors in the current year that kind of also look back at prior year data. I think we'll put them into their own category. That says something like returning students. Typically these errors only show up in the new year. So when you're in the follow-up window, you would have to keep switching back and forth between years to see them. I think a way maybe I would handle that is essentially we'll make errors. We'll kind of make an error in the current year that says, hey, and you have like it would be a new error number, like an error 799 that says, hey, you have an error 546 in the following year, and list that data. Something like that, just to make it easier to see it. And really just kind of we'll publicize that these are definitely things you need to be looking at before October 2nd as part of the follow-up. All right, sorry, let me get back to Q&A. Suzanne, following up on the last one about the non-public SPED students. Identified they still aren't need SPED, or if they exited SPED, so need an exit from school too. So in that case, Suzanne, I think you would have to know that they exited SPED. So then if we had a report basically that says, well, kind of like I mentioned with 12th grade SPED students, but another kind of, well, I think, Suzanne, you're basically describing the validation error that says you have a SPED exit with no matching enrollment exit. But essentially we could create a report out of that error as well. So yeah, that's something we can consider. And I said, even if it's just a form letter that can be sent to a private school, that is a lot more doable, especially if we create the language for it. I'm assuming that there is some rule at NDE somewhere that says that private schools have to share that data, but I would have to, I don't know that off the top of my head. But certainly that would be a lot easier to produce. So I like that idea. All right, Jamie says, NDE will, so this would be coming from our special ed team. They'll be putting out a technical guidance document to assist with high quality data education for, indicator B6. That would be from, well, anyway, the special ed accountability side of things for educational environments for ages 3 to 5. It's important to double check the preschool education environment and know where the majority of minutes are for their services. So yeah, well, I don't know how I can help with that, Jamie, but yes, that is a note from our special education team. All right, I'm gonna move down here. So I guess I'm taking my time today, so let's speed this up a little bit. Here is a screenshot from, this little timeline I made in Excel that I shared here before. Just to remind everyone where we are. We're here in November, where we're in the middle of the 22-23 school year. The fall collection's done. Technically, we're now in the 22-23 year-end collection. And just a reminder, for 21-22 data, there is still one thing that we are collecting, which is your postgraduate activities data for kids who graduated last year and who are concentrators in career ed. Angela said the checklist was the advisor verifications report year-end spreadsheet. Yeah, I think that is probably what I'm talking about. Can it be broken into separate docs? Probably. I think that is something we can look at. Or at least an Excel file, maybe with 2 tabs or something. We'll see. We probably put it out as a PDF. But yeah, we can look at that one, Angel. All right. Moving on, talk about cohorts a little bit. So part of having this earlier due date means for the follow-up collection means we know there's some stuff, because as we've talked about, some of what you're reporting in the prior year you don't get to know about until after you see what other people are reporting in the new year. And so some of that is inevitably happens after October 2nd. So that means that we have more cohort resolution requests, which is where we're changing enrollment data for for students that are, you know, affecting your cohort who would have been 12th graders in the prior year. So like I said, we've NDEs processed about 250 of these. I put this in the bulletin, so hopefully everyone's already seen that, but just a reminder, the grad and dropout rates for 21-22 are available to districts in the NEP Secure. There was a problem where we weren't showing it. We were showing it for the district, but not for individual schools. That has been fixed today. So you can also, for districts that have multiple schools, you can see that now. And we've asked that anyone who needs to make more changes to their cohort rates, probably related to your 21-22 rates, please submit those requests to us by this Friday, the 11th, and we will get those included in the public NEP release. Otherwise, you know, with those requests are always available, they just show up in the next year's NEP. We don't have the specific date for the NEP release yet, but we are trying to do it next week. So we'll be sending emails to superintendents announcing that in the near future. Oh, that's what I just said. We will send an email to superintendents that will have a link to a preview of the public site, probably about 2 days before the actual public release, so that anyone in the district who gets that can see the data that for everyone that will go public. However, most of the data on the NEP is not really available to be changed. There's data that was due in June, as well as data due in October, statewide assessment data that's already gone through the final review process. You know, or there's really multiple steps of review of statewide assessment. We sometimes will consider late changes if they have a serious effect on like your AQuest accountability scores, but little changes we probably wouldn't do. And again, reminder, attendance data that gets locked in June. And generally we don't change our locked data after that, because it gets used by our state school finance team. So sometimes people around this time of year are finding differences with their attendance data due to getting audits. We won't update the locked data due to that, although you can still update your live data if that may help with your auditor. So the data steward is looking at NEP, Ellie says, and only sees 2021 right now. I don't know how that would be happening, that unless, Ellie, you're talking about someone looking at the live public NEP. The NEP Secure, I think, only has a single year on it. Or maybe the NEP Secure you could flip between years, but I'm not aware of any way that someone would be on the NEP Secure and only see 2021 data. All right, quickly, just what's coming up in 22-23. This is all mostly stuff we've talked about previously, just to remind everyone. So right now we're still beginning to work through the late request from the fall collection, which there's less of than the follow-up, but that includes advisor data as well as staff reporting data and the CDC. So we'll be working on that for the next week at least. I've turned on the course related reports for 22-23, including NSSRS validation, the staff not endorsed report. We will be activating the 22-23 graduation rate and cohort calculations soon. Basically, as soon as we're done with the 21-22 stuff. And we need to do that soon because soon we will be activating the roster reports. And the ACT roster report needs that cohort data. But Maggie will be talking about that soon here, so I will skip that. More what's coming up, CRDC reports. As I've kind of talked about this a little bit before, but just to be clear, the plans are still kind of up in the air, but based on how last year went, I think I want to build a report that districts you can use to download a CRDC format file of the data we have and then upload it yourself. We still need to play with how that would work, but I think that'll just be a lot easier than us uploading for everyone. And then there was a lot of districts who had issues with that, and it was kind of confusing about we upload, but then, you know, if you uploaded something, we would wipe your data out when we uploaded. So we'll avoid that, hopefully, by letting you manage your own CRDC submission to the OCR. Like I've talked about before, new instructional unit reports and any other suggested changes. We've got a backlog of ones to work on. All right, sorry I went long. Thanks everyone. Ellie said she prefers it, the verification report checklist to be one page, and you can filter it. So yeah, the verification report checklist, I feel like we must give that out in both an Excel and a PDF version. So maybe that is where the discrepancy comes in, but certainly we can look at that. All right. Thank you, everyone. And like I said, as usual, advisorhelp@nebraskacloud.org. If you have any other comments or things you want to ask us later, please send an email there and I'll create a ticket. Gary asked, for CRDC, can't we just pick what we want to go to the OCR from the state? Well, I would say, yeah, in a perfect world, we would build a big system where you hit a few buttons and we automatically send certain data to the CRDC for you. But I don't think we'll be able to create something like that. So I'm hoping that having report download versions, and I don't know if it'll be one big file or maybe multiple files for different sections, or both, will allow you to control that, Gary. All right, thanks everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Maggie Sis, talk about the NSCAS statewide assessment rosters. Go ahead, Maggie.
I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. Good morning, everyone. Can everybody see my screen? Doesn't look like it, huh?
No. All right, we're good.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Maggie Sis, and I am the program coordinator in the statewide assessment office. Basically, I'm the liaison between the districts, NDE, and our assessment vendors regarding student data. Today, I'm going to give you a high overview of the NSCAS roster review process. As data stewards, you may be assisting your district assessment coordinator or DACs in this review process, and enter your questions as we go along. When I see them, I can stop and answer them, and we'll get started. So under the Nebraska Student Center Assessment System, or what we call NSCAS umbrella, there are 3 assessments that all the students in grades 3 through 8 and your third year high school cohorts are expected to participate. in for every spring. There are 3 separate vendors for each of the testing systems. Therefore, we have 3 separate roster files. The NSCAS Growth is our newest system. And this is where the majority of your 3rd through 8th graders will be taking the assessment. We have made, everybody knows we've made some recent changes. This is now a through-year process. And so you are able to test your students in the fall, winter, and spring administrations. And then we also have general science that is available in the spring only. The NSCAS alternate assessment is for a handful of the students with the most significant cognitive disabilities in your grades 3 through 8 or your 3rd year high school cohort. The vendor for this assessment is DRC, and their test system is called Insight. Then, of course, we have the NSCAS ACT, and this is required of your 3rd year high school cohorts. Our vendor, of course, is ACT, and the test system is called Pearson Access Next, or we will refer to it as PA Next or PAN. And then we also have the ALPA 21 and the new alternate ALPA, and these are through Cambian Assessment. The Statewide Assessment Office asks all of our districts to review their NSCAS rosters to ensure the most accurate and up-to-date data is pulled into the vendor's roster files from the advisor validation. We'll first address the ALPA, and basically you log into your advisor validation through the ND portal. You want to ensure that you are in the correct school year here in 22-23. You're going to click on their students under validation reports, and you'll come up with some gray tabs. You're going to click on the English language testing. Once the report populates, there is a download icon, and I highly suggest you download it into an Excel sheet or into a CSV file. And you can, really dig into the data and make sure everything looks right. For the English language arts or English language testing, the ALPA 21 and the new alternate ALPA, you'll want to direct all your questions to Allison Denbesti, and I'll provide her contact information at the end. For the NSCAS reports, again, you're going to go to your valid students and verification reports. And there's 2 reports that you can look at. You can look at the NSCAS ACT alternate roster, which happens to be at the top, and the NSCAS growth roster. The NSCAS growth roster is available now. You can definitely review it before you upload your winter roster into NWEA system. And we're hoping to have the ACT and alternate roster available next week. It all depends on that cohort data that we are still working to update. On the NSCAS ACT and alternate roster report, once you click on the report, it will give you an option whether you want to look at your alternate roster or your ACT. So you're going to want to download both of those. The NSCAS reports provide key student data elements that need to be reviewed. Districts need to make data corrections first within your SIS or SRS and publish it to advisor. And then these reports will be live during the review period so that you can verify that the corrections went through. Again, you want to review your NSCAS growth roster now for the winter administration. The testing system, the NSCAS growth, will open on Monday. And so you'll be able to upload your district rosters directly into MAP. That process hasn't changed from the fall or from last spring. It's still the same process. Your district roster should have the same data that is in Advisor. You know, ideally, we want that data to match perfectly. Your district data or district file that you upload to NSCAS MAP should be the exact same data that we pull from the state roster. I will be sending out an email to all of the district DACs requesting a roster review for the spring 2023 assessments, probably by the beginning of December. The district deadline to complete your reviews will be January 9th. And I will be in that email for the DACs, I will include a detailed instructions on how to review the districts, what to look for during this review. We just want to make sure you review the data, and basically what it boils down to, what you fix now, we won't have to fix later. I do want to review, I guess you would call it the student population for each of the assessments. At first, the NSCAS growth roster, your student population will be grades 3 through 8. Your full-time equivalency should be 51% or higher. Any students that are less than 51% are not required to test. Your alternate assessment field code should be no in the SPED record within Advisor validation. And you want to double check your school of record and your school of attendance, especially for those kids who are attending internal programs at different, their school of record and the program is at another location, or any of your typical external program students are sometimes indicated as a different school of attendance. But we want to make sure that your school of record is very accurate, because that is where all of the data will go back to, all of the test results. For your NSCAS alternate assessment, again, grades 3 through 8, and your third-year high school cohorts who fit the bill for the description of the alternate assessment, your disability students. Again, full-time equivalency is 51% or higher. Here's the key to your alternate students that a lot of folks miss is the alternate assessment field needs to be coded yes in your SPED record. And a lot of times the exit date needs to be blank. Those are the two key elements in that area that folks miss, is sometimes there's an exit date or you just need to code yes. And then something new this year, we are going to report school of record and school of attendance on the assessment files. And then for your ACT, it is your third-year high school cohorts, which would be 2024 for this spring. I just want to remind everybody, it's not necessarily all of your juniors or 11th graders. It is definitely pulled only by your cohort. The full-time equivalency, again, is 51% or higher, and your alternate assessment field needs to be no. Some of the students that districts sometimes overlook are your exempt or your homeschool students and your external program students. For your homeschool students, if you want to make sure that their FTE is correct, if they happen to be taking 1 or 2 classes at your district, want to make sure their FTE is less than 50%. Or if they, you also want to check the status. So if they're appearing on your roster, check the status of their enrollment, and that will fix it. Most of your students can be coded as a 205 once they are on the exempt schools district report. And for your external program students, such as your Rule 18s, any of your students attending the ESU schools, or any of your contracted agencies, you're still responsible to ensure that these students are tested. And I recommend that you build a relationship with these external programs to ensure that everybody gets tested. I've built a really good relationship with all of these external programs, so they're very cooperative. They want to help. They want to help you test. So go ahead and reach out to them and make the appropriate arrangements. Again, I mentioned that January 9th is the deadline to review all of your spring rosters, especially the alternate and the ACT. Those 2 will get pulled and sent to the vendors soon after June 9th. And the state does not make any updates to the vendors' testing systems once this initial roster goes up to them. And so after January 9th, if you have any student movement, new students coming in, students leaving your district, it has to be updated in Advisor as well as each of the testing systems. All right, moving right along. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. These are the testing windows that are coming up. Whoops. We're already in or soon to start the winter pilot here, or I'm sorry, NSCAS Growth Winter Administration. And this link over to the side, that will take you up to a link to a 1-page, so you can print this out if you would like, and you can stick it on your bulletin board or share it with other folks in your district. The next one is just some key dates that are coming up. The winter pilot or the winter administration for NSCAS Growth will open. The testing system will open on the 14th, which is Monday, so you can upload your rosters and add accommodations. And the roster review for the spring administration. I have the 14th, that's Monday. That's a soft release date, all depending on the cohort. But the due date is definitely 1/9. And then these are when the systems will open up for the spring administrations. And then at the bottom, I included any of our upcoming training sessions for the spring. And then we have, these are the key dates for the ALPA 21 and the alternate ALPA. And in the slide deck, I also included some additional resources that you are welcome to go out and dig a little deeper if you like. And last but not least, our contacts to reach out to, and if you have any questions regarding your student data. You can send your questions to me. If I don't have the answer, I'll know where to find the answer. So I will definitely be able to assist you with any of your questions. Iris Owens is our ACT on-site liaison. Many of you've probably already worked with Iris. She's awesome and knows ACT inside and out. Allison Denbesti is your ALPA expert. And then I included our general statewide assessment email for any general questions. All right, and that is the end. Let's see, Maggie,
Thanks.
would there be instructions on Monday for uploading rosters into maps for those? Those instructions are already out there on the NWEA site under their user manual. If you want to shoot me an email, Jenny, I can send you the link if you like.
I'll just also mention, I put in the chat, I put a link to the test windows document.
Oh, okay.
And like I mentioned before, we will get these slides posted here within a few days.
And also that when we send out the slides, I will also send out the roster guidelines that I've kind of threw together to help you guys capture those areas that are always seem to be the ones like the adjusting your cohort year, adjusting your FTE, what to look at when you download the files.
Got one more question.
To clarify, only spring rosters will be pulled from Advisor. Winter testing will still need to be uploaded by the districts. The rosters for NSCAS growth will always need to be uploaded by the districts. That is not going to change. They'll be loaded through your map, and then from the map system or CAP, they'll be bridged over into the NSCAS growth platform. It does take an overnight process. So if you upload your district roster on Monday, you'll see it in the NSCAS growth platform on Tuesday. The state will also send a state roster to NWEA, and basically it's more of a quality check to make sure what we have is what the districts have. And we'll run quality checks throughout the test window, and definitely at the end of the test window in spring is when we'll do our major cleanup. Any
right.
other questions? Okay, one moment. I'm in a meeting. Sorry about that, folks. So if there's no other questions, that's the end of the presentation. And for some reason, I have lost my Zoom window.
It should be hanging out up top somewhere. Thanks for joining us, Maggie. Like we said, there is contact info for assessment questions, or just email Maggie.
Yep.
Next, we will be going over to Brian to talk data governance.
Great, thank you. So let me see if I can't get my screen shared. Max, it tells me that I can't share while others are sharing.
There you
To unshare.
go. I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Give me just a second. Tell me when you can see that.
Yep, you're good to go.
Great. Again, I'm Brian Hauser, and I'm, I appreciate Max and Maggie. They really did a great job, presenting the content that's necessary for data stewards. And, now you get to the boring type, which is called data governance. And so that's kind of what I wanted to cover is data governance, and so, what I hope we have, if I can get my slides to move. What I hope to cover is that data governance is not just a wild term or an unclear purpose. What data governance is for NDE and what it's not, where we started to practice data governance like actions, some of the specifics of data governance, where the governance is in place and who's involved with it. And I think the ultimate questions are, why are we talking about data governance and why do we care? Why is data governance important to NDE, and what NDE's report card on the data governance practice? So with that, I'm going to first start with, and I probably should have started with this anyway, who's this new guy? So I'm Brian Hauser. I started with NDE in August, as Max said. I've been here about a couple months. So I'm Director of Data Quality and Support, which is a mouthful, but there's a lot of activities and responsibilities and tasks that have been put on my plate, which is great. Some of it's in updating and reviewing admin memos, specifically in data quality and in security. I was working with Matt before he left, and so there'll be some adjustments on that as we, as new people are hired and we kind of get that going. I'm involved, of course, with data governance and data suppression specific web pages. There's some content that we're working on to make sure that we're distributing that information correctly. I'm also engaged with the business of the committees. So there's a data governance committee, there's a data policy committee, and then there's of course data steward committee that has been put into place. And so there's some care and feeding for those kind of project or those kind of committees, as well as some year-end SLDS grant provider preparation when they attend to see how we're doing. So like I said, facilitate the committees. I'm also kind of collaboration with teams involved with problem management, with people, with processes, with products and projects. You've heard the 5 Ps before, and that's kind of where we're at. And then log and track actions or updates. So but the one piece that's really critical is data quality improvements. So, I've got some other duties, but I'm also focusing on that data quality improvement. So in the past, I've worked as a manager of a 24/7 level 2 support desk for a local internet provider. So I've had some customer interaction, public interaction with customers, really on a 24/7 basis. I've managed an infrastructure support team, which is kind of help desk support, desktop servers, email, voice operations, with a multinational that had 156 sites worldwide. So I've had some exposure with international business. I also managed a network team for an outsourcer. An outsourcer is where they take the computers like mainframe and AS400 from the different companies and move them to a data center. And then, you pipe the requests over a data circuit. So people, they sign into their computer and they think it's right next door and it's really, 800 miles away. But I worked there in the networking team there. And a few years ago, I actually worked at the state in the online applications development area of what was then CDP. So, sometimes I feel like I've helped Alexander Graham Bell test his invention, like the telephone. But does that make me old? I do have some years of experience. I will say I've written programs on punch cards. Graduated from Kearney State with a BS in Computer Science and Business Administration and a Master's in Management at Doane University. For those that don't know what a punch card is, this is a picture of what they look like. Used to be the phone company would send you your bill with a punch card. but we wrote programs on them, and you can see there's little dashes where they've punched out the character representation. There's two different styles of punch card there. My experience was in college. We wrote programs on punch cards, and you have decks of these cards that you would load into a card reader, and that would program the computer to do what you ask it to do. Boy, have we gone full circle or away from that type of technology to now we're way ahead of where we were before. So what's data governance and what isn't it? So, I pulled the DMBOK, which I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the book is like this and it's about that thick. It literally is the data management body of knowledge. So, if you're wanting to know what data management's about, you go to the body of knowledge. And of course, they define data governance as the exercise of authority, control, and shared decision-making or planning, monitoring, and enforcement over the management of data assets. Sounds like a lot of words, so simplify it. Data governance is the use of authority combined with policy to ensure the proper management of information assets. We'll show this, we'll get into this triangle in just a little bit, but what data governance not, it's not a cleansing or extract, transform, load, and data, ETL is what we would call it. It's not data warehousing. It's not database design, and it's not project management. It has a specific function. So hope that answers what it is and what it's not. So when did NDE start moving to data governance or data governance like? And I would suggest that when we first collected a piece of data from our stakeholders for reporting requirements, a form of data governance started. We tried to make sure the data was accurate, it was secure, it fit into a specific record layout, it was backed up, and it was delivered on a schedule. But if you have to evaluate it is it a governance, is it data governance? We didn't really have a formal call out of governance structure. So I don't think I saw anything that referenced the data governance structure. We had policies and procedures. The data access and use policy and procedure from 2013 maps out a lot of what that content is. Who's going to get it? Where are they going to get it? Why? There's just a number of items that are in that document. So there were policies and procedures in place. Some documented, some defined roles and responsibilities. I didn't find a lot of it, but I'm sure there were more, maybe in emails or other locations. But I did see limited evidence of shared decisions about the data as an NDE asset. I didn't see a lot of reference to that. But what I'm trying to say is we're doing data governance. It's probably not in a what you would consider here's a it follows this structure, but the components of it I think were there. So now the challenge point is how do we get to the specifics of what data governance is? Now I relied a lot on the SLDS resources about what data governance is, as they're evaluating, are we doing and practicing that or not? And so their point is there are 4 components of data governance. It should have purpose, it should have structure, it should have operations, and it should have policies and processes. So as we look at it, what are the specifics of the purpose? So establishing that purpose collects the processes and policies into a system to identify what data is governed and the intended outcome of the data governance for members and stakeholders. Outcomes might include policies and processes for governing the data. It also may be improving the data quality and increasing the stakeholders, excuse me, use to support organizational or state strategic priorities. So that's the purpose of data governance. So data structure is the next item in their list. And the structure components include establishing a role and responsibility of the participants among the data governance groups, as well as clear structure that explains how everyone contributes to data governance. It also fosters collaboration, identifies who makes different kinds of decisions. So that structure is clearly documented and followed. One other attribute of it is that a data governance structure should include at least two groups, the executive leadership and the management level group. The executive leadership group helps ensure that program has the organizational authority and resources required to be sustained. And the management level group oversees the establishment and implementation of data policies and processes to improve the data quality and use. I'm just humming right along. So data operations, in that data operations, that third component, data operations, defines how the data governance will work and be executed. And the operations include data governance group, the decision-making process, and how they escalate and resolve issues. So that's the operational component. And then the final is the data governance policy and processes. So policies and process describe how we manage data purposely and consistently. Oftentimes topics like data collection, data access, data request, and data release could be discussed. So here at NDE, we kind of started down a path of building that governance. We could have gone two different paths. One is option A, where two groups fill that structure. One is the data steward would actually be part of the data governance committee, and there's no distinct steward committee. We initially started with that, but we have evolved to the option B, which is there's a policy committee, there's a data governance or management committee, and then there's a data steward committee. And so when putting together the governance, we chose the second tier. We chose that third tier, excuse me. And so as we look at it, here's how our structure is for data governance. We have the data steward committee at the bottom. Notice how that triangle's the widest, because that's where most of the work of touching the data, collecting the data, validating the data, working with the data happens. That's where the majority of the people are at, the data stewards. The data management committee sits in that middle portion, and we just effectively stood it up or renamed some collection committee to the data management committee come May of this year. And then data policy committee is at the very top. Now I did reference who's actually in those committees. You can see product owners and data stewards are in that data stewards committee, which kind of expect. We're in the midst of standing that committee up, and I expect that Max and Naomi will be prime candidates or prime people that are working on it, but I'd also expect some subcommittees to happen as we branch out and pull issues and action items out of the steward committee that go escalated up into the data management committee. So the data management committee is administrators and anybody that's involved with data collection fit into that group. And they meet the second Wednesday of every month. And as the information or as the escalation happens, it goes up to the policy committee, which they meet last Wednesday of the month. And you can see Jill and Ganeshan and Tibor and Kristen are in there. My role is to make sure that I can keep that communication going between the different committees. That's really how I kind of help make sure that's implemented. So with that, that's kind of what our data governance looks like, who and what is happening at NDE. So what happens when we don't have effective data governance? We have the opportunity for the absence of data governance may also cause multiple programs or agencies to collect and release similar data. It can increase the staff burden and produce inconsistent information. Measures such as post-secondary enrollment may be reported differently, lending people to doubt whether the information is actually trustworthy. So data governance tries to minimize that multiple program and agency collecting similar data and then reporting it differently. Also, one of the biggest risks is data breach, where data is released without adequate privacy protections. Data breach happens, an organization can face litigation, legislative inquiries, and the loss of public trust. So with data governance, addresses these and other risks by setting appropriate data definitions, access rules, improving data quality, and protecting data privacy. Which brings us to what are we talking about data governance? And really, data governance structures in place so we can identify and begin addressing high priority data quality issues, and then policies and processes needed to manage the data. This will show our stakeholders that the value of data governance. As we look at why we're talking about it, we follow into that continuous improvement cycle you've seen before, where we do an initial assessment, we improve the process, we pilot new procedures, we implement, we process the control and support, and then we form the appraisal, and we look to say, did that make the adjustment that we need? Otherwise, we make more adjustments. So potential, potential areas for governance: data quality, data timeliness, data completeness, data accuracy, protection, destruction, breach. All those could be potential areas for governance. So why do we care? Or why is it important to NDE? Well, we want to enhance trust in the data. Trustworthy data is necessary to enable users to employ enterprise data to support decision-making, risk assessment, and management using key performance indicators, KPIs. Data helps us make good decisions. Good data helps us make good decisions. So, and it's also been identified as an area for improvement in the grant provider team. They're looking at us and saying, show me the results of your data governance. So what we're required to show them that we're doing this governance and documenting it or detailing what we're doing for that governance. As it said, data is used as a reference. Expect increased confidence in the decision-making process. If we've got data to back us up, our decisions are going to be much better. And we can reduce the level of angst when data is confirmed and validated, accurate by multiple views. Nobody likes bad data. Better data makes better decisions. I said that before. So what's our report card look like? I think this was before I came, but I know that there was an assessment that was done that looked at several different disciplines within NDE. I focused specifically on data governance, and they had a series of questions that they were looking for results of. And you can go down the list. We didn't do very good in project management. Professional development was a 2. I think it was a scale of 1 to 5. And so you can see memorandums of understanding, or MOUs. We're pretty high in that. Documentation, we're, not a 1, but we're not a 4 or 5. Data dictionary, data quality management, policy and procedures, governance body, and communication and marketing. So really, we've got what I would consider opportunities to improve, but their grade for us is we're emerging. So that's kind of what I wanted to get in front of the data stewards and say, this is why we're talking about data governance. You'll hear more of it. You'll hear more of the data steward committee. And as we bring people together with these subcommittees, why we're doing it, because we want to demonstrate the data governance and the importance of it. The importance from my perspective is governance helps me provide quality data. And I wish I could pull the graphic. I looked for it, I couldn't find it, but we want the data, we want high quality data delivered on time, with completeness and accuracy. That's really what our drive should be. So with that, I gave you the reference. I relied heavily on that SLDS grant program. They've got a nice little video, and I pulled some of the graphics out of it rather than try and write my own. We've done our own DSQ transformation, and of course, ISSDG presentations, as well as some books. I've read about it. So that'll be part of the slide deck. I'll open up for questions. So Indy, over the decade of what I would call acceptable data, how far back are we looking for retention, and more importantly, longitudinal graphic data for each and every student at the grade level? Max is helping me with that.
I don't know about the retention aspect of it. As far as graphable data and presenting data, I can say that the systems we're working on building right now about basically data warehousing systems that combine lots of years of data into a back end system that we can then use to drive reports and stuff for front end. I do know we're going at least as far back as the beginning of NSSRS, that's 1112. We're also in some cases pulling data as far back as 0708, I know, which is just, where some of the source data we have starts. So yeah, long term, Gary, yeah, that is as far as data we want to be able to present to users. Yes, it does basically include all of NSSRS as well as all of Advisor.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm not totally plugged in with all the activities, but what I've heard is that they really try to summarize the data, and that's probably what they will retain in prior years. It won't be the detail, it'll be the summary that, will, and Jill has a specific name for it, but it will be the data, but it won't be, individual record by record. It will be tallies and totals that will be brought in that you can still report on. So good question though. I know that we are forecasting and planning for the inclusion of older data so that we've got a better trending possibility. So any other questions? I hope this wasn't really dry for you, because governance can be kind of dry, but I want you to understand that we're really trying to strive to better our data quality for our stakeholders, and the stewards have a really important role in that, because they're the closest touch to the data. So one thing I do want to mention, and I didn't put it in the slide, we're getting ready to send out our annual survey about this data conference, and we're soliciting what you guys like and what you don't like about the conference, what we could do differently, what kind of topics and that kind of activities. I would tell you it's probably going to be the end of November, 1st of December before we send it out, but we are going to send out that survey, and we'll use it as part of our adjustments to how we do the data conference, because really this is about what services you, and I saw it in Max's presentation, a lot of questions about what do we do here? How do we do that? And that's always very encouraging, because that says you guys are getting use out of this data conference. So with that, I want to tell you thanks for attending. If you've got any questions, reach out. There's my contact information. And as Max said, we'll put it in the slide deck that's distributed in the next couple of days. And, I don't really have anything else. And Max, I don't know if you've got any closing comments either.
Just to remind people that, on the data conference website right now under December, it says more information coming soon. We're probably going to not have a live meeting for December. We may post some videos or files here, but we will announce that through the bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely our next live meeting will be January. So that should be January 11th.
Yep.
So hopefully everyone's back in the office at that point. But yeah, that's all we have for today then. Thanks everyone for joining.
Appreciate all you guys participating.
Thanks, Ellen.